Humans have eaten almost everything that walks, swims, or flies. Some people eat snakes, some eat crocodiles, some even eat insects. So why is there one group of animals that's almost always missing from the dinner table? One thing that almost every culture avoids: predators, lions, wolves, eagles, bears. They're everywhere. So why did humans never put them on the menu? Is their meat poisonous? Does it taste terrible? It's not a coincidence. Almost every civilization on Earth don't eat predators. Why? The real reason is far more surprising than you think. Let's travel back nearly 4,000 BC. Humans had already learned something that would change history forever. Instead of hunting every single day, they began raising animals: sheep, goats, cattle, pigs, and eventually, chickens. These animals became the foundation of human civilization because they were easy to feed, easy to breed, and could provide food for generations. But here's where things get strange. Humans didn't just live alongside these animals, they also lived alongside wolves, big cats, bears, birds of prey, and countless other predators. So why didn't ancient people raise them too? If predator meat was such a good food source, why didn't even one major civilization build farms full of lions or wolves? This wasn't just one culture making one decision. Ancient Egypt avoided it. Ancient China avoided it. Europe avoided it. The Americas avoided it. Different people, different religions, different climates. Yet they all reached almost the same conclusion. Predators were hunted, sometimes feared, sometimes respected, but almost never raised as food. The real reason begins with something almost nobody thinks about. What does it actually take to feed a predator? Imagine you own two farms. On one farm, you raise cows. On the other, you decide to raise wolves. At first, it doesn't seem like a big difference. Both are animals. Both need food. Both need space. But after just a few weeks, one farm becomes far more expensive than the other. Why? Because cows eat grass. Wolves don't. Every single wolf needs meat, and that meat has to come from another animal. Now think about it for a second. Before you can feed one wolf, that you first have to raise another animal. That animal also needs food, water, land, and time to grow. In other words, you're feeding animals just to feed another animal. Now imagine trying to raise 1,000 wolves. You wouldn't just need one farm. You'd need several farms growing food for the prey. Before the prey could become food for the predators, the costs would explode. The amount of land would multiply, the amount of water would skyrocket, and the amount of meat required every single day would be enormous. Suddenly, predator farming stops making sense. But here's the crazy part: even if money wasn't a problem, even if someone gave you unlimited land, unlimited food, and unlimited time, there would still be one major problem, and that's exactly where things become really interesting. So what exactly builds up inside a predator's body? Every year, factories, mining operations, and other human activities release tiny amounts of pollutants into the environment. Some of these substances eventually make their way into rivers and oceans. They're often so small that you can't see them. Now imagine a tiny fish swimming through that water. As it feeds, tiny amounts of those substances enter its body, not enough to kill it, just enough to stay there. Then a larger fish eats dozens of those smaller fish. Now it isn't carrying toxins from just one fish, it's carrying the combined amount from many. Later, an even bigger predator eats hundreds of those large fish. Again, those substances keep adding up, meal after meal, month after month, year after year. By the time an animal reaches the very top of the food chain, it may contain far higher concentrations of certain toxins than the animals below it. Scientists call this process biomagnification, and that's one of the reasons top predators like sharks can carry much higher levels of substances, like mercury, than many other animals. That's why doctors advise pregnant women to avoid fishes like swordfish, king mackerel, and some types of tuna to eat. But there's another problem. Think about how predators survive. Unlike cows or deer, they don't eat plants, they hunt. And in the wild, predators often go after the easiest target, the old, the injured, or animals that are already weak. Sometimes that weakness is caused by disease, sometimes by parasites, sometimes by an infection. When a predator eats that animal, It isn't just eating meat, it's also exposing itself to whatever that prey was carrying. This doesn't mean the predator always becomes sick, but over an entire lifetime, after hundreds of hunts, its chances of being exposed to parasites and harmful pathogens become much higher. And that's one more reason humans have generally preferred herbivores and domesticated animals over wild predators. At this point, you might be wondering, has anyone ever eaten predator meat? The answer is yes, but only in rare situations. Let's start with bears. In parts of Russia, Alaska, and among some indigenous communities in the Arctic, bear meat has been eaten for generations. But experienced hunters have always followed one important rule: never eat the liver of a polar bear. This isn't just an old myth. Back in 1597, Dutch explorer Gerrit de Veer and members of his expedition were stranded in the Arctic. With very little food left, they hunted a polar bear and ate its liver. Soon afterwards, several members became violently ill. They suffered from severe headaches, nausea, vomiting, and their skin even began to peel. Today, scientists believe the reason was acute vitamin A poisoning. A polar bear's liver stores an extremely high amount of vitamin A, so much that eating it can make a human seriously sick. And that's not the only concern. Even bear meat is usually cooked very thoroughly because it can carry parasites like Trichinella, which can survive in undercooked meat and cause serious illness. What about lions? There have been rare reports of lion meat being eaten in parts of eastern and southern Africa, usually after traditional hunts or in special local circumstances. But it has never become an everyday food, and no civilization has ever raised lions as livestock for meat. And that's the pattern you'll find almost everywhere. Predator meat has been eaten, but only as an exception, never as the rule. But predators weren't just seen as animals. In many cultures, they became symbols of strength, courage, and power. Across different parts of the world, hunters proudly displayed the skulls, claws, teeth, or skins of predators in their homes, not as food, but as trophies. Among some indigenous tribes, wearing the skin or parts of a powerful predator was a symbol of honor and bravery. In other places, the head or skull of a bear, lion, or wolf was displayed to show courage, status, or respect for the animal. To many people, a predator wasn't something you raised for dinner. It was an animal you admired, feared, or respected. And that way of thinking survived for thousands of years. So, can humans eat predators? Yeah, but only in rare situations. If there's absolutely no other source of food, humans can survive by eating predator meat. But as a regular part of our diet, it has never been a practical choice because of the risks and challenges we've discussed. That's why, throughout history, predator meat has remained an exception, not the rule. But what about the taste? Surprisingly, people who have eaten predator meat often describe it as strong, gamey, and much tougher than common meats like chicken or beef. That's because predators usually have lean muscles and spend their lives hunting, making the meat denser and less tender.